Welcome to another OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners podcast. My name is Brandon Drum. I'm here with Parker Thune, and we have SEC Mike from that SEC podcast celebrating the Sooners start to the SEC. It is July 1st. Everybody's celebrating. Everybody's in Norman, Oklahoma City, Tulsa, and we've got the man, the myth, the legend, the guy that has been all-encompassed as far as SEC goes and podcasts go. SEC Mike, we really appreciate you coming on with us, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is what, 3 years in the making. It's finally here. Oklahoma coming into the SEC. Couldn't be more excited for the best conference in the country by a wide margin. It's just getting better with Oklahoma and Texas coming in.
And we're super excited about it, man. It has been, like you said, 3 years. And I got to tell you, the allegiance, it's kind of funny how it works. Like everybody was hating on the SEC, and then Oklahoma, whenever they announced it, that fateful day, and voted Oklahoma in, everybody went from hating the SEC to saying screw the Big 12 within like that. It was a very, very, very quick turn of events, and the SEC pride, even though they weren't in the SEC, started resonating from Sooners fans. It was pretty funny.
Well,
So
yeah, and I've heard this said before, and I firmly believe it. I would imagine Oklahoma and Texas have benefited greatly the last couple of years because they could throw that pat. I know they're not supposed to, but say, hey, we're going to recruit you. Come play for us. You can play in the SEC. And oh yeah, guess what? We're still feasting on a Big 12 schedule. So I mean, in that extent, I have to imagine for Coach Venables, Coach Sark. I mean that's been a godsend for them.
Parker, you got some?
I do. SEC Mike, here's my initial question, because just as you guys down in SEC territory are starting to get more familiar, more intimately familiar with Oklahoma and Texas, those of us in the Oklahoma and Texas markets are starting to get more familiar with the SEC and the way of life across the Southeastern Conference. As someone who has covered the SEC for some time now, here's what I want to ask you. Is there and I don't really know what better way to phrase this than, is there a runt in the SEC? And I don't mean Vanderbilt, because like we understand Vanderbilt's there. They're largely irrelevant. And I think even the most diehard of Vanderbilt fans would accept that they are absolutely the cellar dweller of the SEC. So I don't even count them. But I ask that more to say, like, is there one team in the SEC that every other fan base just kind of looks down upon?
I mean, it really just depends on what just happened. I mean, we're so reactionary. Tennessee fans are always being trolled. I should know. I'm a Tennessee graduate. Florida, as long as Billy Napier's down there, they're going to be getting trolled. So it really just depends on how things are trending, how things are leaning. I mean, we will break the spirit and break a coach's back in a damn hurry down here. So yeah, there's not really just one. And I know some people would probably say, well, look at Mississippi State. Well, hell, they have a winning record over A&M since A&M came into the league. And it's not like A&M's been garbage. A&M's got the fifth most wins in the SEC since they joined. And it wasn't that long ago, 2014, I guess that was 10 years ago. Mississippi State was number one in the country. So even the obvious candidates have their moments. They have a hell of a home field advantage with those damn bells. I got one right behind me somewhere, but those cowbells they're pretty damn annoying, but they do create for a unique home field advantage, certainly.
Well, so you pointed behind you and you talked about the cowbell, but I see the OU helmet, I see the Texas helmet, and that seems to be like, I remember that. I can't remember what episode it was that you actually had that up there first, but I remember thinking in my head, wow. Like that was kind of a surreal moment for me to see an OU helmet behind you and to hear you talking about Oklahoma on that SEC podcast, because that wasn't something that I think any of us envisioned was going to take place. For the most of us, it was like, well, Big Ten, Pac-12 at some point, and rest in peace, Pac-12, obviously. But um, when that was initially announced, Oklahoma, Texas, or even the buzz of that starting to come about. What was your initial thought of that? Can you even remember back then and your initial thought of that and how that went down?
Well, I do remember basically everybody was mad at the damn SEC because they said, well, God, they're ruining the sport and all that. And certainly I think you could make the case they forced the Big Ten's hand to try to stay competitive and add some teams, which, I mean, that's a whole nother subject. But I think the Big Ten is going to torpedo itself by adding the California schools and Oregon and Washington. Good luck. I mean, when you're having to go across the country 5, 6 times a year for a football season, I don't
Yeah.
know who's going to sign up for that. But I mean, it was insane. I do remember A&M being pretty pissed because they were promised that Texas would never come into this league, and that got obviously broken. So that stood out. But if you remember, it wasn't even supposed to be this year. It was supposed to be
25.
2025.
Mm-hmm.
So, at the time it was like, all right, let's cut this in half. We were hoping it was going to be 2023 season, but yeah, that's kind of what I remember just being, my God, like the SEC was already so dominant. I didn't think it could possibly get any more dominant, but then here comes Oklahoma and Texas. Oklahoma, arguably the most recognizable brand in all of college football, and then Texas, who talks a big game but rarely lives up to it. But we'll take them too, just to renew that A&M rivalry. I
Woo.
can't wait for Texas versus A&M.
What do you think of the new 16 team SEC in terms of obviously, you look at that conference, it's the best conference in college football, deepest conference in college football. But you look at the new 16 team SEC, and it seems that we're in an era where the landscape of college football is constantly evolving with regard to conference alignment. And there's been buzz and there's been steam for I don't know how long at this point about Clemson and Florida State getting out of the ACC and a potential another round of realignment that could come somewhere down the line. Uh, you feel like a larger SEC is A, feasible, and B, to be desired?
I think at this point in time, no. I don't. The SEC's not got much incentive to do that now. The one thing I have heard that's kind of rumbling beneath the surface, you mentioned Florida State, you mentioned Clemson. Everybody knows them as football schools, what have you. I don't think the SEC needs anyone like that anymore. I mean, it's you can't possibly get any better unless they add Ohio State and Michigan, which please God never add those Yankees to this conference. But I think if they do expand, I think it'll be North Carolina. I think it'll be Virginia, and with the mindset of just getting into those states, being the school,
Hmm.
the main institutions of each of those states, and adding to what is already a growing basketball conference, but making them a little bit more dominant in another sport. And they'll never say this on the record, but I know I get, fantasy football, you want to add all, you want Clemson, Florida State, throw in Miami too. They're sometimes good at football, but I don't think the SEC wants it to be like that. I think, and again, they'll never say this, but they would rather have football programs like North Carolina and Virginia that are closer to a South Carolina, maybe even a Vanderbilt, to where the other rest of the league is kind of looking at these like, okay, we can beat North Carolina, we can beat Virginia more often than not in football, and those schools would come running to the SEC. So it's not all about just adding the football powers and making it even better as a football conference. I truly don't believe that based on anything I've been told.
So I've always wondered this, and the SEC already had Texas A&M, so the Texas market per se they already had, right? Like they had the Texas market, but the reality is, and this isn't a shot at Texas A&M. Majority of Texans are following Texas and Oklahoma. That's just the reality of the situation. That's what it is. There's a ton of OU grads in the DFW in Houston area. Obviously, there's a ton of Texas A&M. They're one of the largest institutions in the United States. But when you add, close to 40,000 undergrads every year at Oklahoma and whatever 60,000 or whatever, you got 100,000 undergrads flowing in constantly, whether it's in Oklahoma or Texas. As far as viewers, right? These are eyes, and it's going to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow as more and more graduates take place. Um, Did you think that it was more of a let's go grab television markets and essentially Dallas and Austin being that they're really big and growing, and similarly Oklahoma City is one of the fastest growing cities in the United States. Did you think that was part of the strategy, obviously, for the SEC when they decided to go and add that is like, hey, let's not just get national brands. Let's grab those TV markets too. And Oklahoma City's not large. Tulsa's isn't large. Like I guess I think Oklahoma City's now starting to push top 40, and Tulsa's in like top 60. But when you throw in Austin and Dallas into that equation, you've got a lot of eyeballs now that are more inclined to watch SEC than they were previously. Was that, and I know it's probably rhetorical, was that one of the more major factors of the addition of OU in Texas in your mind?
Well, you got to be very careful how you phrase these questions because there's a lot
Yeah.
of litigation on the line. Texas and OU called the SEC. The
Oh, my
SEC
bad,
didn't
my bad.
call
Yes,
them,
that's very
right?
true. It's
So
very
they
true.
they called them and said, "Hey, we're looking around, and if you don't take us, guess what? We're going to call the Big Ten. We're going to call the Pac-12." And I would imagine that would have been about a 90-second conversation. We'll take you. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
I think it was more about that. Just I don't want to call it a threat, but that's how the Big Ten possibly could have caught up with the SEC, adding Oklahoma, adding
Mhm.
Texas. But again, Southern Cal, UCLA, I've lived in Los Angeles for 8 years. They don't give a damn about those schools. Now, they care about when they have Pete Carroll and Reggie Bush and they're the sport's best product, right? But beyond that, they don't care about any of that. You can't
Mhm.
even fill those stadiums. And then I know Oregon and Washington, or Washington just went to the national championship. They'll probably never make the college football playoff again, in my opinion. Without, they have one good year, we steal their coach. Oregon, a little bit different story with Phil Knight, but as soon as he's gone, I don't know how sustainable that is either. So yeah, they can add all these schools. They'll probably add Florida State and Clemson. It will not put a dent into the SEC. I truly don't think it will.
Babbel is a proud sponsor of OU Insider and the Under the Visor podcast. The best way to learn a language is immersion, living where the language is spoken and using it every day. But if that's not in the cards this year, you can still learn a language the second best way, and that's with Babbel. Be a better you in 2024 with Babbel, the science-backed language learning app that actually works. Don't pay hundreds of dollars for private tutors or waste hours on apps that don't really help you speak the language. Look, if you're like me, you probably took a few years of Spanish or some other foreign language growing up, and everything went in one ear and out the other. You didn't really learn anything applicable to everyday life. But Babbel's convenient courses have helped me learn real-life conversation skills in a different language. It's so easy to learn how to order food, ask for directions, speak to merchants, etc., without having to consult language apps while on vacation. Now, here's a special limited time deal for our listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/OU Insider. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/OU Insider, spelled BABBEL.com/OU Insider. Rules and restrictions may apply. Mando is a proud sponsor of OU Insider. My guys, you ever lift a little too hard or just forget to apply your daily deodorant and get hit by a truckload of BO from all directions? Or does that 3-in-1 shampoo leave you needing a second shower just a few hours after the first? Well, from the founders of Lumi, Mando Whole Body Deodorant is helping men conquer their odor in a brand new way. Formulated with mandelic acid, Mando has long-lasting 72-hour odor control that actually stops odor before it starts. Mando also boasts cologne-quality scents, including their bestseller, Bourbon Leather. Brandon and I both love it. We take a Bourbon Leather body wash wherever we go on the road in a travel size. It's a game changer. It was for us. It will be for you. We've got a special offer for you as well. New customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code and link. So use code INSIDER at shopmando.com, shopmando.com. Again, to help you get hooked on my favorite smelling whole body deodorant on the market, you can get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to over 40% off your starter pack when you use code INSIDER at shopmando.com, shopmando.com. It's time to smell better naked. Your partner will thank you.
You think the SEC is going to be all well and good with the Big Ten coming and grabbing two of the bigger names and getting into the South like that, like getting their grips into the South. You think they'll be okay with that?
I mean, I obviously I think they would prefer they didn't, but that's
Yeah.
what's going to happen because, in my opinion, I don't know much about the Big Ten, but they've already made it clear. You know, we'll add West Coast, we'll add Northwest. Yeah, they're going to add. They're going to brand it as a nationwide conference. I would have to imagine, but again, how feasible is that? The Imagine Miami and Oregon playing every year. I mean,
Yeah.
it's stupid compared to what the SEC is, landlocked and the history and tradition. I just I don't think that model is going to work. So I would be opposed to the SEC if they ever tried to add. I mean, I did make that joke when Southern Cal and UCLA came announced it was going to the Big Ten. I said, well, I can't wait to Oregon join the SEC. And they went wild because they want to come to the SEC. They wanted to get
Yeah.
out of the Pac-12. But clearly that's a joke. That would tarnish everything I know about the SEC.
So you're down with keeping everything below the Mason-Dixon line, essentially. And,
Yeah,
and just kind of, as you said, location, 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 because that adds to the, the pageantry and all that. I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. I cannot fathom. Could you imagine a ACC or even a Big Ten where Oregon or Washington has to fly all the way down every other year to play Miami and just complete dichotomies of
as a
corners
conference game.
as a conference game, right? Like
I mean, hey,
that's just
USC and
insanity.
Rutgers is a conference game these days,
Yeah,
and a
that's
conference game that's going to get played this fall. Let's talk about the actual prospects on the gridiron in the SEC in 2024. Mike, I want to know from where you stand, which statement is closer to the absolute truth of the matter? The SEC and its fan bases are collectively underestimating how competitive Oklahoma and Texas are going to be stepping into this league versus Oklahoma and Texas and their fan bases are underestimating what a meat grinder the SEC is going to be week in and week out.
I would
that's
say the
good.
second one, where Texas and Oklahoma fans are underestimating the SEC grind. I truly do think. Now, that's not to say that. Hell, I'm very high on Oklahoma. I think they can come in here and make some noise. Obviously, everybody's high on Texas, except for me, really. But I'm not sitting here saying they don't play football. They don't know what football is all about. But it's just different. And
Mhm.
I'll put it to you guys this way. I'm sure you guys have memorized the schedule by now. I'm almost tired of talking about schedules. We've been talking about it for 6 months. But Oklahoma's playing two teams this year that if their opponent, if they don't win 10 games, the fans are going to be, this is a disaster of a season. Can
Yeah.
you take any guess? And again, there's two of them. Can you guess which two I'm talking about?
Alabama is
Ten-
certainly one, and
No.
LSU is
No, no,
likely.
he's talking about non-traditional like teams that
See,
you
that's the thing. Parker hit on it.
yeah.
Yeah, you think it's Alabama, you think it's LSU, which
Yeah.
that's true. But
You're thinking Tennessee and you're thinking
not
um
even see again. There's so many of these damn teams that you got to watch out
ooh,
for. But it's Ole
Don't
Miss
say
and
Missouri.
it's Missouri.
oh my God. I
If
was
they
gonna say Tennessee and Missouri, but
if
yeah, I forgot
neither
Ole
one of
Miss.
those teams wins 10 games this year, those fan bases are going to be irate.
Yeah.
That's what you're walking into, and that doesn't mean they're going to beat you, but that's I mean the expectations and everything is just insane. I mean, coaches are not even getting 2 years anymore to prove themselves in this conference, and that's why I don't know if you guys caught it, but I did a live thing right after Brett Venables got his extension, and
Hmm.
at first that struck me as kind of odd till I actually went into the details of it, and I didn't have a problem with it per se. I don't think it was a bad move because
Well, you're answering my next question, by the way, so go ahead.
what they gave him, he's worth it based on SEC salaries. I mean, he's still towards the bottom, but the logic of giving that to him before he coached in the SEC, before before we can see what these coordinators do, because I certainly believe a first time head coach, you really shouldn't judge him how good of a head coach he is until we get to the second round of coordinators.
Hmm.
That's just my belief. Now, again, does that mean he's awful and they're going to be bad next? That's not what I'm saying. But personally, I wouldn't extend a guy till I actually saw that on the field.
So you're saying like after his coordinators get poached and then he goes in and rehires, his second round, that's like the true testament of what that coach can be, not who he brought in with him per se, right? Is that what you're saying?
Right, because ideally, what you're trying to be, right? I mean, I know everybody says
Mm-hmm.
this, and I get sick of it because not there's never going to be another Nick Saban, and to hold your standard to that or Kirby Smart, that's not what we should judge every single coach on. That's kind of stupid.
Yeah.
But the point being, Oklahoma demands excellence, and if Oklahoma's as good as the fans expect, their coordinators are gonna get poached every 2, 3, 4 years, right? So how good are you at filling those spots? And if you've never done it before, there's been coaches that that have nailed it on their first coordinator hires because they've known these guys forever. They've always known when I get that head coaching job, I'm going to hire you. I'm going to hire this guy. Well, how do you handle replacing those guys?
Yeah.
Because that's a difficult task in itself, I think.
Well, okay. So this season, ironically, would be just that for Brent Venables because he's replacing Ted Roof, defensive coordinator, with Zach Alley, and obviously Jeff Lebby, who is now the Mississippi State head coach, with Seth Luttrell as the offensive coordinator. Is that and the thing is and we saw that, and Venables has tried. I don't know if you've noticed this. He's tried to do the Saban model of going and grabbing like former head coaches and kind of outcasts and put them as analysts. And he did that with Luttrell. Um, who was the other one, Parker,
Matt
that he did?
Wells.
Matt Wells. And then he's got some other names, obviously, that are quite big in the analyst position and obviously as position coaches. And he's been trying to do that same kind of deal where, you rehab underneath him. And once that person goes, you're next in line to be the OC or the defensive coordinator. And like you said, I don't think that's an easy. It's almost impossible to replicate, right? Like, because Saban's the only one that's ever been able to do that for an extended period of time and keep doing it over and over and over again. Because he had guys by the likes of Mike Stoops just sitting there, Sarkeesian just sitting there, um, Kiffin. I mean, that is unbelievable. That is unbelievable. Like when you sit back and actually think about that, Mike, like, and I don't know how many of us have actually done that, like sit back and actually think about what he did, not just on the field, but what he did coaching staff wise with Saban. And you say that's never going to be replicated, right? I agree with you on that. So on the Alabama front, DeBoer, how much do you think the pressure is on him, like right here, right now? Like you're filling in for essentially the greatest coach of all time in college football history. How does one do that?
Thoughts and prayers, coach. You know what I mean? Like, because you're going to need it. You know what I mean? We're recording this late June.
Yeah.
Everybody loves him. They're kicking ass on the recruiting trail. They're giving him all the credit, not the Saban dynasty that every recruit in the country wants to go play for, even though he's not there anymore. It's not. It has nothing to do with Saban how well they're recruiting. It's all Kalen DeBoer and his. I call him DeBoring. He's pretty damn boring, but he is a good coach. I'll give him that. I'm not foolish enough to say he's not a good coach, but right now they're undefeated. He's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Fourth game of the year, they host Georgia. Georgia whoops his ass. That's when trouble's going to start. Or hell, even the week prior, which I don't think they should struggle at Wisconsin. But if they lose that, by God, I mean he may not survive the Georgia week if they lose to Wisconsin. I mean it's going to be that bad. How does he handle that? How does his family handle it? And I'm just telling you guys, it's a different story down here. And it's not just me. It's 4 hours of being called a moron on the Paul Feinbaum show each and every day until you deliver. And I've had an Alabama analyst on here recently said, well, Nick Saban's really been struggling on the road last couple of years. That's an area Kalen DeBoer will be better at. So they are already looking at how can Kalen DeBoer be better than the greatest coach of all time. I mean, it's idiotic, and that's what he's walking into. So, hey, I wish him well. I think he's probably a top 5 coach in the country,
Yeah.
but good luck, man, because nothing's going to be good enough for those people down there, and he's walked right into it. So it's going to be wild to see. Now, could they win the whole thing next year? It wouldn't shock me. I mean, with the talent they have on hand in that coaching staff, but if they don't, yeah, I think the clock will already start ticking on him.
Now, I imagine you are more than prepared for this question as someone with a finger on the pulse of the SEC, Mike. But heading into the 2024 season, give us one team you are higher on than the general public and the odds makers, and one team you are lower on than the general public and the odds makers.
Probably Florida. I know it's so fun to crap on Billy Napier and company, and you know he's going to get fired and all this, but no, I think they'll be one of the more improved teams in the SEC. Now, I say all that they lose week 1 to Miami, the whole thing could go sideways on them. So just a ton of pressure, but I think so many people have already written them off. I don't know what the over under is today. I know it's been hovering around 4.5. I mean, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that they win 7-8 games. So, which would nearly double, obviously, depending on where the over-under is today. Graham Mertz came into this conference. I thought he was the worst quarterback, you know, in the SEC as a starting quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
He was pretty good last year. So, year 2 of him in the system, I think he's in for even a much better year. And then someone that is kind of, I'm not buying the hype, would be LSU. I don't understand the LSU love, given all they lost. And they did make some good coaching hires, I think, but they're not going to walk into that building and snap their fingers and all of a sudden have a top defense. I mean, they were just awful. They were literally the worst defense LSU has ever fielded, and they got a long way to go, particularly on the line of scrimmage, before they can be close to one of the better defenses in the SEC. So I think they're going to struggle there, and they were the best offense in the country, but I mean, I would be surprised if they're top 10 in the country next year. So they have to take a step back on that side of the ball, in my opinion.
So that question that Parker asked, I want to ask you, as far as Oklahoma and Texas is concerned, we're 3 years down the line now. I know that's crazy talk, like trying to project with the transfer portal and recruiting and all that.
And the SEC being the
And
SEC.
the SEC being the SEC, right? It's crazy talk, but that's what we're here for. We're here to make outlandish, prognostications, and so let's do it. 3 years down the line, you've seen how Oklahoma recruits, you've seen how Texas recruits, you've seen how they also work in the portal. Obviously, with the Dominique Williams deal with Oklahoma, that was something that surprised the crap out of everybody. So that said, who is on an upward trajectory 3 years down the line? Who is neutral or going down between the two programs? And I'll even one better you. If you were to bet today, who's a happier fan base at the end of the year this season, Oklahoma or Texas, on how they ended up in their first season in the SEC?
Damn, you're hitting some hard questions here. I mean, we haven't even seen them play one SEC
I
game.
know,
You're asking
I
me
know,
3 years
but
down
I mean,
the
that's
line.
what we're here for. It's fun, but it's off season, unfortunately.
I think again, seemingly I'm the only one that's down on Texas, so I would think Oklahoma fans will be happier this season. But down the line, oh man, I hate to say it, but I would probably lean towards Texas just because Sarkisian, and again, I don't even think he's that good of a head coach, if we're being quite honest, but he is an outstanding play caller. I have to give him that. He's got Ewers. He's got the future with Arch Manning. Of course, he could be a bust. If he's a bust, I'll be completely wrong. I don't know, but that for that reason, I kind of lean that way. All this, I'm sure you guys have. I mean, how could you have missed it? But the last couple of years, Jimbo and A&M and all their NIL money. Well, now I hear from A&M people, they're like, my God, you should see what Texas is spending in NIL. So it's funny how they go back and forth about who's spending more in NIL. But if Texas keeps that up, again, will that even be a thing in 3 years? I don't know with
Yeah.
the players getting paid, but that is something to consider. Not that Oklahoma's not paying, just like you alluded to with Williams getting added. I just, from what I know, Texas and Oregon are like 1A and 1B in NIL. So that's a leg up. Quarterback development. That's just so paramount in this sport. That's kind of why I lean Texas. But again, at the same time, I've been saying this. I think Oklahoma's going to come into this league and have maybe the number 3 defense in the SEC. And this is while Venables is still building it up.
Yeah.
It could only get better. So it could be the best defense on one side, the best offense on the other. I mean, that's a damn hard question. But I'm splitting hairs here. But I think I would just barely say Texas.
Okay,
That's fair.
I'm gonna play to my audience here, Mike. You mentioned that you're down on Texas going into 2024. Expound on that. Why?
Well, again, I think, and I feel bad because I just rehash crapping on Texas basically every show I come on. But this is, this is what I really think. That, again, Sarkisian gets overhyped as a head coach. He's been a head coach for 10 years. He's got one 10-win season. They won 11, I think it was, but still, only one time have they reached 10. Again, he gets so much credit for their offense. And again, Quinn Ewers, I don't like to sit here and bag on players, and I don't know that this is technically bagging on him, but he has at times been awesome. But let's keep it real. Other times he's been very inconsistent. And he's also not finished a full season without getting injured. So if you're telling me we've got an inconsistent but talented quarterback that has an injury history, and oh, by the way, we return the least amount of receiving production of any team in the SEC, all those guys are in the NFL, and his starting running back from last year in the NFL, again, it's hard for me to not see a drop-off on that side of the ball. And I don't understand what people – it's like I'm taking crazy pills. I'm the only one seeing this. But Texas defense was a lot better than the offense last year. And the big reason they were better is because no one could run the ball on them. And the main reason was 2 studs that are in the NFL now. So, again, and their secondary is somewhat of an issue as well. So that issue is still there. I know they lost a key guy via the transfer portal after spring. So, I don't know. There's reasons to kind of doubt Texas in my mind. Whereas, again, I don't – like some people have Sarkisian as the top 5 coach in the country, and I don't know what in the hell they're looking at when they see that.
So with that, let's talk about you're up and down on yours, which I totally get. But when he's good, man, he's damn good. Like he's phenomenal when he's really good, but then he's very flighty in some instances. I mean, we saw it against Oklahoma last year. Even Oklahoma in the 49-0 win when Oklahoma didn't have a quarterback and they were playing tight ends and running backs at quarterback. There were a couple of plays where he just played catch with Oklahoma's defense, and you're going, what in the world was he looking at? Because there wasn't a Texas receiver over there. So I get what you're saying there, but on the flip side with Oklahoma, Jackson Arnold's kind of, he's an enigma to a lot of people. They saw what they saw during the Alamo Bowl last year, but they also saw what they saw during the Alamo Bowl last year. And there was, much like yours, you saw a kid that could just spin it and make throws that were they were grown man throws, and then turn around and he would make a freshman mistake. So what's your expectation for Jackson Arnold, year one SEC? Can he win 9 games or more at Oklahoma with the schedule they have and the defenses that they're going to go up against?
Well, I think he can, but I think that's obviously going to be very difficult, and that's about the high mark. I think is 9-3 for Oklahoma. And again, we did the schedule breakdown on the show the other day, and I said 9-3 optimistically, and that was just kind of breezing past beating Tennessee, which could be a playoff team. Completely, I don't have a lot of respect for Auburn, I'll be honest with you, but it is a difficult place to play. Hell, Georgia nearly lost there last year, and Alabama should have lost their last. So I'm giving them that one too, and I'm giving them the Texas. So I mean, and these are 3 games that they could all lose. Now I'm
Yep.
not saying they're going to lose. They could beat all those teams. It wouldn't surprise me. But again, it's pretty damn daunting, particularly in the SEC when I know they have a ton of confidence in their offensive line coach, but I mean, this ain't a video game. We can't just plug people in and expect, seamless production on the football field. And even it goes a step further on our fall camp series where we not only look at the starters, but we look at the guys behind them. I mean, I think they've got like 2 projected offensive linemen that are reserves that have essentially played in a football game. I mean, God forbid one of these guys that they project to start goes down. I mean, it could be a nightmare there as well. So I mean, they're very thin on the offensive line, but I'm not saying anything you guys don't know. They could have the best receiving core in the nation, that's a reason for optimism. I just told you I think they're going to have one of the better defenses in the SEC. So there's reasons to like them, and I think their running back is really underrated. Just from what I've seen, I believe he ended the season with 5 100-yard games.
Yep.
He's being underutilized. So. Or not underutilized, but under-respected, I think, because the SEC right now does not have a lot of great running backs. So he could be all SEC. He could be one of the better running backs in the conference. So there's reasons to like Oklahoma, but there's reasons to question them. And I think 9-3 would be one hell of a debut in the SEC.
Let me ask you about one of the upper tier programs that's on Oklahoma's inaugural SEC schedule, Mike, and that would be Ole Miss, because I think there's a lot to unpack there. Lane Kiffin has made Ole Miss transfer portal U. I mean, they have brought in portal edition after portal edition this offseason to try and stock up for what ought to be a viable shot at a playoff run in 2024, especially with the expanded 12-team field. Now, I also think there's a larger conversation that kind of percolates there. And we're now on the heels of seeing how the Jimbo Fisher experiment at Texas A&M has turned out. What do you think of Ole Miss in 2024 and their prospects? And on a broader scale, what would you say about the strategy that was espoused by A&M initially of simply buying a roster via recruiting via the portal, assemble as much talent as possible, no matter how much money it costs you, and just see where that goes?
Yeah, I think Ole Miss can win the national championship, which people freak out when I say that. But, aside from Georgia, again, I don't follow Big Ten closely, but I know by all accounts, Ohio State's got one hell of a roster too. But besides those 2, I'd probably put Ole Miss as the third best, my third most likely team to win it all next year. So I don't even think making the playoffs good enough. I think they should go far into the college football playoff. And I, quite frankly, I love Kiffin's strategy because never in a million years is Ole Miss going to out-recruit Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Texas, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Florida. Well, maybe they can't Florida because Billy Napier sucks so bad. But again, you're not going to outdo these guys. So he's found a loophole. He's even called it. He says this is wild, this is stupid, this shouldn't be the way it is. But as long as this is the way it is, I'm going to take advantage of it. And yeah, he's portal king, all that. But the secret really is not the portal guys. It's the guys they're bringing back. And they've made this moniker, last dance, they're all in. Jackson Dart, Trey Harris, he's one hell of a receiver. Caden Prescorn, Lane Kiffin's offense goes on another level when he has a tight end. And Prescorn is that guy. He didn't play against Alabama last year. He was injured. All the talent they're bringing back. They're number 3 in the SEC in returning offensive production. Year 2 of Pete Golding on the defensive side of the football. I know Alabama fans hate Pete Golding. They think he's awful. Again, they're going to probably hate DeBoer here in about a year or 2 when they realize he's not Nick Saban either. But Pete Golding was a hell of an upgrade for Ole Miss than what they had on the defensive coordinator staff. So all these pieces and where now, again, I said what they're bringing back is the most important, and it is. But you know, they got their ass whooped by Georgia last year. It was like 51-17, something like that. And Kiffin said, well, we just don't look like them. And that's what they utilized the portal for, to
Yeah.
get Princely, to get Walter Nolan. They got 2 offensive linemen from Washington that they won the Joe Moore Award. They got an offensive lineman from North Carolina that was a starter, starting tackle off Southern Miss. I mean, they're threw most of their money on the line of scrimmage, and they added a receiver, Juice Wells, that was at South Carolina. I thought I had him as the best receiver in the SEC going into last year. He hurt his foot. He didn't make a huge impact after, I think he played in like 2 or 3 games, but they didn't even need Juice Wells. But it's like they're just adding strength on strength. And Kiffin's motto seems to be, you know, if that offends any of the current players, well, then get the hell out of here, because we'll just replace you with someone via the portal. And again, is that what Alabama should be doing? Is that what Georgia should be doing? Oklahoma and Texas? Probably not. But they don't have to. Whereas Ole Miss, Missouri, I think schools like that, they should attack it, and the ones that are the ones that are thriving.
By
So
the
what
way,
are
let
go
me
ahead.
let me just follow up with this, Brandon, because many listening will remember this. That's former future Oklahoma defensive coordinator Pete Golding. There was a lot of talk back in the
Oh my
2018,
God.
2019 offseason about him being the guy to replace Mike Stoops and then Ruffin McNeil. Of course, it ended up being Alex Grinch, as we
Yep.
know. But there was a time where people thought Pete Golding was going to be the next defensive coordinator at the University of Oklahoma.
Many a long nights talking to my guy Tim Watts at Bama Online about that. We were going back and forth, what he was hearing, what I was hearing, and he actually helped me. Um, he knows a lot of people down there as far as like when the staff obviously was hired with Oklahoma. Tim Watts is the man down in that region. He knows he knows his stuff, man. So I appreciated him during that time because I almost got stuck falling for that Pete Golding stuff and had to backtrack a little bit and ended up going with Alex Golding reporting instead. So that was kind of blast from the past there, Parker. You brought up the trend. I want to talk to you about Heupel here in a second, but and Tennessee coming to Oklahoma, but because I know you're a Vol guy, right? Like you're a Tennessee Vols through and through. But you brought up the transfer portal versus recruiting. And what is your overall take of sustainability? Do you prefer a balance? Do you prefer more heavy high school and then sprinkle in your transfer portal guys to like put you over the top? Or are you more of a, you know, I guess a Kiffin and Missouri type where they're going to go all in mostly with the transfer portal. Which one do you think is more sustainable in the SEC?
Well, I mean, it. I understand the question, but really, there's no way to answer it because I think it's totally dependent on each school, each roster situation. So I again, I don't think there is a right way. I don't think there's a wrong way. And the portal and NIL has not even been around long enough for us to really make these declarations. But again, should Georgia just go all in the portal? No, I don't think so, but they don't have to, right?
Right.
Should Alabama go all in the portal? Well, maybe when your coach leaves in late January and you lose 40 guys, yeah, you got to get into the portal. But normally, no. Alabama probably outside of a receiver here, whatever you're stealing, cherry picking, whatever we want to call it. I thought it was great. Nick Saban during the draft publicly admitted he tampered, and no one batted an eye, no one gave a shit. But that's neither here nor there.
What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do to him? It's Nick Saban. Yeah.
He cheats. Take away all his titles. I'll be fine. Give us back the Tennessee wins every time he kicked our ass by 60 points. Give us that win. But no, I don't. I mean, it really just depends on the situation. Truly, just like I said about Ole Miss, they don't have a Georgia roster. They'll never have a Georgia roster, so they got to go in the portal. I think so. Is it sustainable? This is the year we're gonna find out, because if Ole Miss and Missouri in particular, if they suck, I don't know what Booster is going to give to any coach ever again. Not on this level. Now, again, I think you could even, and I've pondered this just thinking out loud here. But let's say Kiffin wins big. is the money even there for Ole Miss to do this annually? I don't know.
Mm.
But if I was Kiffin, if the answer is no, I would win big, and then I'd look to see who's sucking, like Florida, and be like, can we get them to pony up NIL? I'll go down there for 2 years,
Yeah.
and then I would leave there. I would just keep leaving and see which fan base is so desperate to win big. They'll give
Mm.
me $30 million in NIL. I would do that every 3 4 years if I could.
The
Well,
ironic thing is Lincoln Riley thought that's what USC was going to do, and now we see them not so much.
the money ain't there. At least not how he thought it was going to be. That's for sure. Well, Mike, we've taken close to an hour of your time. I got one more question to throw at you. Oklahoma plays 4 true road games in the SEC this year: Missouri, LSU, Auburn, Ole Miss. The biggest culture shock, environmental shock to OU fans that make the trip to one or all of those 4 SEC destinations is going to be which town?
Oh, it's got to be. It's always Baton Rouge. It's LSU. I mean, I never in my life have I've been to a lot of music festivals. This is the closest to a music festival that I've ever been to. Is a night game, LSU. It's insane. And from what I didn't even know this was a thing, but I'm sure you guys are well aware. Apparently, there's a lot of bad blood between Oklahoma and LSU, and it goes back to Sugar Bowl
Yep.
back in the
Can
day.
attest for it. Can attest. I got a story for you.
So that I think in itself, that's going to be awesome. Particularly if LSU and Oklahoma are really good this year, and I mean I don't think it's a stretch to say that could be a game with a playoff berth on the line.
Yeah, that's interesting because I'm so excited. I want that to be a night game, just for the fans that did not get to participate in the Sugar Bowl's purposes, because they need to understand why there's bad blood. Because there's a
Be
sect
careful
of
what
the
you wish for if
I
you want to be
know
down there at
but
night.
I'm also greedy, and I've never experienced a night game in Death Valley, so would love to see that take place. I'm going to be in the press box. Don't really care. It has nothing to do with me. Everybody else around, I feel sorry for you, but yeah. I'll quickly before I ask my last question. Dude tried to urinate on me several times. Multiple people wearing. I had my OU stuff on. I'm obviously a college attendee, and down there with my boys. One of my boys actually ended up in the drunk tank, even though he didn't do anything, just because he got shoved into a mirror. But we're not going to go into that.
Did any of these guys smell like corn dogs?
No,
Don't if you say that, don't get you'll get hit if you say that to any LSU people down there. Just be forewarned. They do not like to be called corn dogs. That's why
interesting.
there's infamous Katy Perry throwing the corn dogs. She did game day.
Oh,
They
well,
take major offense to being to
well,
say
you
they
just
smell like
stoked
corn
the
dogs.
fire of everybody that's going to watch this and go down there, and they're going to be bringing corn dogs with them. But yes, the LSU fans were not very kind, but you don't expect them to be kind in an environment like that. So, but the bad blood still remains, just because OU was not used to that kind of action of a fan base at that time. That was kind of their indoctrination into what the SEC was really like, because it wasn't really a neutral site at all. So, I'm interested. I want it to be a night game. I know that's selfish of me, but my last question to you is, and I really appreciate you coming on with us, Mike. Um, the Heupel Tennessee, obviously Oklahoma's going to come in and Tennessee's going to come in and they're going to try to prop up the prodigal sons back, the guy that brought back, the national prominence outside of Bob Stoops has been Josh Heupel. He's still somewhat beloved in Oklahoma, even though he was let go as an offensive coordinator. And he was quite polarizing as an offensive coordinator. And I think he was kind of the scapegoat, unfortunately, during that tenure of Bob Stoops' career. Um, how do you think Heupel is going to perceive it? What do the Tennessee fans view this game as? Because it's not only is Heupel coming into town and playing his alma mater, where he won a national title and almost won the Heisman Trophy, and he coached there for over a decade, but it's OU's first SEC game as an actual conference game, and they played back there in 2014 in Norman. The stadium's bigger, It's enclosed now. It's completely different. But what is the Tennessee Vols thoughts on that trip? I mean, are they thinking it's just another, we're just going to play like it's Alabama, or is it okay, this is going to be a little different because of everything that surrounds that game?
Yeah. No, I certainly think it'll be a lot bigger to Oklahoma people, and that's
Yep.
not to be
No, no,
not trying to
absolutely.
take a shot, but because it's their first SEC game, because it's Josh Heupel coming back. Now, I think a ton of Tennessee fans travel really well, so I would anticipate a ton of Tennessee fans, if they can get tickets, will go to that game. So, not saying that, but yeah, that's a reason why when we did our show that I picked Oklahoma to win that game because of the insane atmosphere, because of the buzzsaw, because of the lead up to it. I mean, it's again, you guys know better than I do, but it should be three massively easy wins going. So again, you'll have momentum on your side. Tennessee plays NC State week 2. I don't know much about NC State, but I keep hearing buzz about them being preseason top 25. So Tennessee could already have a loss coming into this game. I don't think they will, but they could. Whereas I'm almost certain that Oklahoma will be undefeated coming into this game, which adds to a atmosphere SEC type game like this. But yeah, that should be one hell of a showdown because Tennessee's in, Tennessee and particularly Heupel's in a weird spot where I think this time last year it was like universal, not universal but close, that Heupel was the top 10 coach in the country, and now I don't see any of that talk, and
Hmm.
it's kind of strange because I mean hell, they Tennessee just won 9 games, and again your audience may snicker at that, but 9 games in the SEC is a
No,
solid
no,
season,
yeah.
and believe me, Tennessee grad here, 9 wins is like our fourth most in 20 years. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't awful, but it just wasn't what was expected after winning 11 2 years ago. So I think they're at a crossroads here where is Heupel really elite or is he just pretty good? Is Tennessee, are they a playoff content? I mean, they're getting a ton of buzz for playoff contention, or are they in that next tier where, every 5-10 years, maybe they can get there? Those are all fair questions, but
Yeah.
they don't return a ton of production either. But Tennessee's in a weird spot where they look at that like it's a good thing because Joe Milton was average. Let's just call it what it is. And fans are so excited about Nico, and they think that he could be the next great quarterback in the SEC, which I have no reason to believe he won't be. Will it come next year? That may be a stretch. Particularly, that'll be his first true road game in Norman. Good luck. But their running back is outstanding. He was third string last year, but a lot of people thought he was the most talented running back on the roster, and one of those backs is now in the NFL. So, they're replacing some things, but Tennessee is where they're outstanding is on the line of scrimmage.
Hmm.
They're probably going to have a top 5 offensive line in the SEC, and they may have the best defensive line in the SEC. So I think we'll see what Oklahoma's offensive line looks like, but just on the offense defensive line, I would give a heavy edge to Tennessee, just in that game. But I would say the exact same thing with Oklahoma receivers and Tennessee's defensive backs. Oklahoma will have a major advantage there. So it's it's a unique matchup game. I think that I think it's a coin flip. I really do. I would favor Oklahoma, but not by maybe like 55%.
And just not to keep this podcast going, but did you notice that Oklahoma has to play like everybody that they play in the SEC either gets a bye before them or has to play the Sisters of the Poor right before they play Oklahoma?
I've heard that. Yeah, you are not the
Oh,
first one to bring that to my
oh,
attention. I don't know who
brutal.
did the scheduling, but they were not a Sooner. I can promise you that.
No doubt. Well, Mike, we really appreciate you obviously coming on the podcast. This has been a pleasure. Oklahoma is now in the SEC by the time this comes out. It's going to come out on July 1st. The inaugural SEC day is upon us. So those fans that aren't aware of who you are, which I'm sure there won't be many that are watching this podcast, please tell them where they can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. The show's called That SEC Podcast, #1 highest rated SEC show on Apple and Spotify. We're
Mhm.
on YouTube. We're doing really well over there. And if you just search SEC Mike, I'm pretty easy to find. It's me. It's my cousin. He's really my cousin. He's the funniest damn guy I ever met in my life. he's not a member of the media. He just drinks beers and watches games, but he's way more popular than I ever will be. So it's just two family members talking SEC football, and yeah, that we try to give out. We we don't have the highest production value, but we make up for it in entertainment. I can promise you that.
It's a great podcast. You and Cousin Shane are awesome. I had no idea he was your real cousin. I thought that was literally just a moniker for him, just because he's from the South and it just sounds funny. Um, you guys do a phenomenal job. That's hilarious. One of these days we're going to figure out the backstory to that whole podcast starting up. But obviously we're running out of time this time. But Mike, really appreciate you coming on here, Oklahoma, Texas, now in the SEC. I hope to have you back on again one of these days to definitely talk the OU Tennessee battle before it takes place late September. So thank you so much for coming on here.
Absolutely. Thanks for the invite, guys. I appreciate it. It was a good time, and yeah, can't wait to see this. I'll make sure to retweet it and share it and all that. Welcome to the SEC. I can't wait
Appreciate you.
can't wait for it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. For SEC Mike, for Parker Thune, my name is Brandon Drum. You guys have a blessed day.